The Southside Historical Village is a 501c nonprofit organization. Their mission is to preserve and collect artifacts from the 1800s. They've created the village so people can visit it to see how other people lived during the 1800s. They conduct seminars and tours and demonstrations, and you can visit the village during the week of the fair. You can also visit the village every month during the summer when they have open house. This is the Mercer one-room schoolhouse. It was the first building that was donated to the historical village. Inside is Mrs. Betty Broadmerkle. She's going to tell us about the history of the village and the one-room schoolhouse. Mrs. Broadmerkle was the only original member of the village, and she has celebrated her 91st birthday.
Okay, I'm Betty Broadmerkle, and I'm going to try to tell you some of the history of the Southside Historical Village. We started back when Bill and Ruth Mercer donated the Mercer School to the Grange, and they didn't want it lost because we was interested in the one-room school, which started. Most of the schools were built around 1850, and this one was the second school in Green Township out in the on McCleary Road, and it was built in 1874. And so we wanted to preserve the one-room school because now there is very few of those left, and we're trying to keep the history of the school alive. So our village really began with this Mercer School, and it was called the Mercer Project. So it was in really bad shape. The roof was bad, and the boards was off of the side, and so we had to take the old stones. It was just little sandstones underneath. So we got big stones donated for the foundation, and so it took us a good while. And that we moved the school in July 14th, 1995, which was a very hot day, and I have pictures of us moving the school up through Hookstown and out to our spot here. So that's how we started, and we still want to keep the one-room school alive. Well, then later on, it took us a long time. We didn't have the dedication until 1998 when we got the inside of it finished. And then Doc Swaney was one of our members at that time, and he was from Ohioville, and he knew about this old blacksmith shop that was stationed over there, and it was sitting there empty, and it was in bad shape. So we moved it in the early part of 2000, and I have pictures of putting that together here. And then later on we got the Johnson log house. It was a two-story house, and it was empty, but people had lived in it until 1990 when they had it all drywall inside, and they had carpets, and so we had to go out over and dig out all of that drywall down to the logs. And so then we had the logs all numbered, and we was put into four piles because it had to be put together the same way that it was taken apart, and because it was notched, and so it had to be put together. So I really liked those little stairs that went up, but we thought that would be dangerous, and there would be more upkeep to keep just have a little cabin. And so we did have to buy, or we didn't buy, Lions out on 168 donated a lot of the wood and the logs. So I even went out there one night when they was cutting the log, and I have a picture of that too, of them cutting the logs, and so Harold Slopey notched them so they would fit in there. And so then we got that built, and then we was donated a corn crib, which we made into a pedestrian covered bridge. Then we had the log cabin, and then we got the bread oven, and it's a really nice big bread oven. So we have it running every time that we're open, and we're open the second Saturday of every month through the summer, starting in April or May, whatever the weather is nice, and we go till October. And so then we got the barn. First Energy was buying all of those properties out there on Little Blue, and so there was some members that worked down at First Energy, and they said, why don't you donate that barn to the village? So he did that, and so after we tore it down, we found the cornerstone, and it had Roman numerals on it, and when we read the Roman numerals, it was 1858. So we got the Amish, and so if you look at the outside, it looks like a nice, pretty modern barn, but inside is all of the old barn structure inside. And so we had the Amish come and put that together the way they took it down. So then we got the doctor's office, and it was from out on the Nelson Stone House on 30, and they had this little doctor's office, and she didn't know the history of it, but I did a lot of research, and I was trying to find out if there was a Dr. Nelson that was a doctor, or why that doctor's office was built. There was 2 rooms, 2 small rooms. So I looked up deeds, and I found out there was a Dr. Hezekiah Nelson. So I knew that there was a doctor. So then when I did the census, I found out in 1860, the census, that Hezekiah was a medical student, and so it was built around 1870. So that's the history of our village.